Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, wait till you see what we create today. Now, we are going DIY style today, and so no real dyes necessary. This ended up way better than I was anticipating, and I love this. And as I said, DIY, pretty cool. Now, I will say that this is going to be a sort of fun fold card today, but I want to create a sunflower. And there's sort of going to be a catch to that, but let's work on this first. So I have 3 inks. I just happen to use Distress Oxide inks. By all means, use whichever inks that you have. I just like the Oxides because they definitely blend together very well, very easily. And I have a scrap piece of paper here. Now, by scrap, I don't mean small. I just mean it was, this size for no particular reason. And this evolved. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off with a base of squeezed lemonade. And that's just, that was how much I thought I might need. And then I am going to use some mustard seed, which is just a sort of darker yellow. Now, I just use one ink blending tool for all of this. And so I just dab off the darker ink around the outsides when I want to come back to the squeezed lemonade. And then I go back into the lighter color. And that's fine. It's worked perfectly well. I do it with all of my ink pads and all of my ink blending tools. I have a set for oxides, a set for my dye inks, and a set for my pigment inks. And so I have, I think, 15 blending brushes, and that does every single ink that I own. So I have 5 for my oxides, 5 for my dyes, and 5 for my pigments, and that's all good. So then I added a tiny little bit. I was going to use fossilized amber, but I did end up using a little bit of the spiced marmalade down the center, I think. Now, put this over to the side while it dries for a second. Now, I have these Deckle edge circles from Honeybee. If you don't have these, use regular circles. That's going to work perfectly fine. I have cut out 2 of these, and I'm going to bring in 2 different brown inks since recently I got the ground espresso, and now I have 2 brown inks to work with. I have had just the vintage photo for the longest time, years and years, only one brown Distress Oxide. And now I have 2. So I'm going to make the good use of them. And I have one here going to be covered in the vintage photo, and one is going to be the ground espresso. The lighter one is going to be the larger one, but use what you have in your stash, of course, and by all means, you can use just regular brown cardstock and cut them out. I have the inks out today, so we are inking. So here's my 2 circles. Again, I'm going to put these aside to dry whilst I come back to my petals. Now, we are creating the petals for the sunflower, so I wanted to get sort of mileage here. So really, this is sort of a 2-for-1. I'm going to score down the middle just so I can fold this, and that piece down the bottom where it was white, that's really just so I could put my fingers somewhere. Then I'm going to score, I don't have measurements for any of this, so I'm just going to score a line down the middle, and this is 2 things. This is going to help me later on, but then it is also going to help me sort of create the shape of the leaf. It guides me a little bit, of the petal, sorry. Now, although there are no measurements, I can tell you here that each one of these petals, so this is 2 effectively, is about 2.5-ish inches, and there's no reason that I made it that big. This is just the piece of paper that I had. As I said, I was just estimating at this point, and I like the look of that first one, so I'm going to go along and score about every 1.25 inches, and that would again just help me regulate the size of the petal. So it has scored through to the other side, but not quite as deep, and that's perfectly fine. That's okay. And so you'll see how these petals sort of come to shape. Now, I am going to cut these apart. This is really just a 2-for-1 scenario. And I suspect that if you have a look in your stash, you probably have a petal dye, or this could be a leaf dye, but just, do it in these colors, and then all of a sudden it becomes a petal. And so I am freehand cutting all of these, and that's, I was enjoying my crafty time, so that's more than okay with me. And I have got these beautiful little petals ready to go. Now, each one of these has the score line down the center, and I'm going to use that, and I am going to sort of crease gently upwards and go with the score line. Now, I went ahead and did 2 of these sheets. I had no idea how many petals I would need, but I did 2 of them, and that was heaps. I had some left over, and then occasionally I would reshape the odd one that I came across, but I am splitting all of these in half, just sort of going through and checking each one, split it in half because we're going to do a tiny little bit more inking, but honestly, this actually didn't take me that long and was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed this process of doing it all myself. I'm taking the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink and I'm just coming down on an angle at the base of the petal, just sort of from each side. You can sort of see how I'm coming in from the left and coming in from the right, about 3/4 of an inch or so up. But honestly, as I was going through these petals, I ended up going pretty fast and just, it is what it is. No flower is perfect. No petal is perfect in nature. And so I'm going to take the same rule for crafting. And so I was just going through all of these, and actually this made a big difference. I really love the look that this made. So I've got my center little pieces there for my sunflower, and I have all of my petals pretty much ready to go. It was just a light layer of the Vintage Photo down the base there, and as I said, I was whipping through these by the end of them, and honestly they all still worked out perfect. It doesn't matter whether there's sort of darker ink spots or you've got more in one place and less in the other. It's okay. They're all going to be just fine, and truly not one petal stood out as different by the end of it. Now, the score lines that I put down the center of each one of the petals, as I said, because I doubled it over, some of them had stronger score lines than others. Again, this truly did not make a difference and didn't stand out as different from one or the other. But I'm going to go with that and quickly go through and just gently crease each one of them up and create that little bit of dimension. As I said, this card turned out way better than I was anticipating it to. I really, really enjoyed this process. So when you get to the end of this video, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and let me know what other shapes we think we could try for this, because as I said, this was a bit of a DIY one, but yeah, I really like how it came out. Now, let's put this all together. I am going to use the Art Glitter Glue, and I'm using this specifically because this glue grabs fast. As you'll know if you have watched my last few videos, I recently, within the last few months, have been trying out the Art Glitter Glue because it has such a good reputation, and I usually use my matte medium, my Ranger multi-medium in the matte finish, and I love my matte medium. I still love it. I still have purchased it and fill my glue bottles. And I really kind of like them for different uses because I must say the Art Glitter Glue, for me, it dries a little too quickly when I am putting layers together, like matting layers and things. It dries so fast, whereas I like, and maybe I'm just used to it, but I like the ability to wiggle it around a little more, and the matte medium gives me that, and it still gives me the stronger hold. I do also think that the matte medium perhaps it dries with slightly less sheen than the Art Glitter Glue, and they both dry with relatively little, but I would say that the matte medium just wins out just a little bit. But anywho, this is a great use for the Art Glitter Glue because we are creating this project, and you can see sometimes I'm having to hold each petal for a couple of seconds before I move on. So this definitely has great benefits, and I purchased the glue, so I may as well make the use of it because otherwise that's just money down the drain, and that's not how this channel goes. And so I am going to use it, and I'm happy to use it. I think it's a great product. I think both of them are great products. So once we have my sunflower complete, I have gone around and add the very last petal here, and you can see what the back looks like, but don't worry about this because this part won't be seen, of course. It is the front that matters. And then I love this already. I think we're doing pretty well, and we still have a few more things to do to this. So at this point, I am going to put this aside and work on my card base. Now this is so super simple. I am going to use a 4-inch strip of cardstock here. Now this strip is 11 inches long. That's just how it came out of the packaging. And then from here, I'm going to turn this around and do a couple of score lines to create our fun fold. I've popped these up on screen just so that you can take a screenshot or go back in the video to look at them, but basically we're scoring at 1.5 inches, 3.5 inches, 7.5 inches, and 9.5 inches. And my cardstock is a little off, so I had to cut a tiny little scrap at the very end. This is just how it was manufactured, that's how it came. And so I have my score lines ready to go, and then this is so simple. All I'm going to do is fold in those ends and then fold back that little one. It doesn't matter as long as your two reach pretty much to the middle. I like to have a tiny wee gap, but as long as they reach pretty much to the middle, it doesn't matter how much further those the end flaps come, because they are what we are going to attach our flower to in this case. Now, as I said, actually, There are a whole lot of ideas here, and I had some different ones that I think if you would like to see, I have some different ideas of what I would put on the front, but I'd love to know what you would put on the front of this too. Once you see the end of the card and how we're going to do this, there are so many ideas that came to mind. So I am going to do a little bit of inking. I have the Squeezed Lemonade Distress Oxide ink. I have used my mint tape to create a little border here. Now, by all means, I could have added in a matting layer of cardstock here and also added like a yellow layer and then a white one on top where they could write, but as the card had so much cardstock in the sunflower already, I am happy to do this inking method just because it's, 2 less layers of cardstock. And at this point, although the card worked out perfectly, we try and do what we can to reduce the weight a little bit and make sure the card is balanced nicely. So for this one, just inking with ink works out really well. And the mint tape held up perfectly. This makes a beautiful, tidy little frame to frame the center. And again, you can skip that step by all means. This one here is so pretty from Dress My Craft. I have had this one for quite a while. I'm not even sure if it's available anymore. This, I will admit, is one that I have been hoarding a little bit. I didn't want to use it because it was so pretty, but I am working on that this year. And I am going to use this one just to do the side panels. Now, you may also like to do some stamping. You could mask these off and do some stamping just in black and white. I mean, I was just going with this piece here. I'm trying to capture a couple of the butterflies, and I feel like that goes kind of nicely with the sunflowers and the yellows. I really like that, so this was a nice, easy option for me. And so I'm just going to cut out a couple of panels that will fit nicely and have a little border around the outside. So they will fit there, and I'm going to cut out 2 of these. I did add a tiny little bit of inking just with some vintage photo around the outside just to give these a nice finished look to them. But again, you can skip this step. You can skip as many steps as you want and create your own beautiful creations. And if you do go ahead and do that, we would love to see them. I would love to see your creations. If you were inspired by this video or any others on my channel, then we would love to see them over on our Facebook group, Come Crafting with Natasha, and that is where I can see them and I can talk to you there. You can tag me if you'd like to show me something. So that is a great place to come and do that. Now, with this sunflower, this is going to be the ouchy part, and I will tell you that this took me a breath. I had to hold my breath for just 1 second because we are going to cut the sunflower in half. Now, honestly, I didn't measure. I'm not good at measuring. I'm not very good when it comes to that. And so I did guess, and it worked out just fine. I'm going to just take the middle of the petals there where it sort of divides in two. I run my trimmer up and down, and of course there are a couple of layers of petals at this point, and so I am going to I didn't want to ruin it at any point, so I was being a little bit careful, so it didn't completely come apart here, but I'm just going to take my scissors and snap the last little 2 bits that didn't come apart, and I will just quickly run through and separate these in half. Now, as I said, this part I did have to hold my breath a little bit, but it worked out okay. Nothing fell apart. It worked perfectly. This is exactly what I needed. Now, a few things that we need to do. There is a little white edge in there, the white core of the paper. So I'm going to take some brown for where the center is and then some yellows just to run along. You don't need to do this. This is just one of those sort of finishing touches that cleans everything up nicely, and the brown in the center there. And then when it comes to the other little circle that we die cut, I'm going to add that on too. And so this is the ground espresso color. I just estimated where to cut again. I didn't measure it all, and it worked out okay. It was just fine. Again, getting rid of those white edges on the center, and then I'll just use some glue to pop these where they need to go. And it looks like it's going well so far. Everything went pretty well in this card, and actually every step was pretty simple. And when it all came together really, really well, which was good. Nothing went really wrong in this one, but as you will see in a recent video that I posted where almost everything went wrong. So it happens. Now, just as a little bit of detail, I have a white gel pen here, and I'm going around, I'll just zoom in so you can see a little bit, just around the base of the yellow petals, and then I'm also going to touch into the outer layer of the brown inside there and just add a few little dots. Now, this is just, barely noticeable, but I think that little bit of texture really adds something, just a tiny little bit. Now let's get to putting this all together, because this is the part where we're going to put this on the card. So these 2 petals here are going to attach. Now there are a tiny little corner where you can actually see the card behind it. Again, this doesn't bother me, that's okay. The card is, it's obvious what it is, and so I've got nothing to hide behind there. I don't mind that you can see that tiny little bit of white poking out at all. And given that I didn't measure any of my petals or measure any of the project, then this worked out okay. So I know how it's going to go, and now I feel safe that I can glue this on. So I'm just going to glue this entire panel here, make sure that this has got really good contact because the sunflower is slightly bigger. Now the back of the petals also doesn't bother me because actually they're pretty tidy back there. It was only the center part that looked a little, like where all the pieces had met, and so that was going to be covered up nicely by that panel. So I was more than happy how this worked out. And then, of course, with a beautiful card like this, I am going to need to create a custom envelope. Now, because I knew that this video was already getting really long, and I am trying to keep to shorter videos, I did some of the envelope off, but I wanted to show you some of the finishing touches that I did as well. Now, here I'm just putting together the very end of the envelope. I actually just use the same method when I create my own envelopes, and I will link that video down below. But if you search on YouTube how to make an envelope, it comes up and you'll be able to see. I add my matte medium to my little piece of copy paper here because, as I said, I like the wiggle time. So I have this little insert that I just pop in, and just makes it look like a really finished, polished envelope. And then on the front I have, this is the other piece of white cardstock from when I cut the base of my card, and I'm just going to trim this down into a little rectangle, and this is where I can write an address, or if I choose to just gift it to somebody, then that's fine too. I'm going to round the corners off again, just little finishing touches. And then actually I had this piece here this is left over from the side panels that I cut out, so I'm going to round the corners on here too, and then I will just add that behind as an extra little feature. Then I decided that I would ink around this with some squeezed lemonade, so you can see a little bit of that around the edge there. Use some art glitter glue to pop those 2 panels together, and then this will be glued down onto the front of my envelope. Yes, this is an odd shape for sure, and yes, it's probably easier to gift this one, but also with really special cards like this, I'm happy to pay for extra postage and know that the person will really appreciate it. So here is the gorgeous card finished and done. So let me know what you think. I really enjoyed the process of creating this one. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here and making it to the end of this video. I appreciate that very much, but thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.